for the honor of Grayskull. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Evelyn and I still have not shut up about SheRa and the Princesses of Power. It is the last week of Pride Month and this is my last video of Pride Month and I thought, why not do something special? So today I am coming at you with a brand new original tag, the SheRa and the Princesses of Power book tag. So this tag was actually co-created by my new friend Dani from the Metamorphoreader. I will put links to her blog and her bookstagram down in the description. She does a lot of really cool things with Latinx rep. She is an international blogger and she's a fellow SheRa fan. And so when I tweeted about wanting to do a SheRa book tag, she saw that and responded and said, hey, I was also thinking about doing one, why don't we work together? And so we worked together and came up with these prompts and we're so excited to be sharing it with you guys. Yay! So SheRa and the Princesses of Power is a Netflix original cartoon made in collaboration with DreamWorks. It is a reimagining of the 1980s SheRa Princess of Power cartoon. The original show was from the 80s and it had some issues with all of the female characters looking the same and having a very specific body type, and there were no characters of color. But what it was known for was having lots of LGBT sort of themes and hints of that. Of course, this new reboot is one of the gayest shows on television, which is why I've made two separate SheRa related videos during Pride Month. I am not tagging anyone in particular as of right now because I don't have enough bookish friends who are also into this show. Dani is pretty much the only one. So if you're watching this and you also love SheRa and you want to make a video or write a blog post, then I encourage you to do this tag. So the first question is based off of SheRa. So in the universe of SheRa and the Princesses of Power, whoever wields this sword called the Sword of Protection has the ability to transform into a magical warrior princess named SheRa. And the main character, Adora, is the current SheRa, but there have been previous incarnations. So for the SheRa prompt, we are going to be sharing a favorite fantasy book. And one of my favorite things about SheRa and the Princesses of Power is actually the world building. It's set on a planet called Etheria, which is home to a bunch of different kingdoms which are all ruled by princesses, and then there is a group known as the Evil Horde who's trying to take over the entire planet. They're at war with each other and have been for a while. But in the past, this planet had been colonized by a group known as the First Ones. They're the ones who left behind the Sword of Protection. The original SheRa was the first one, and the First One's lore is very integrated within the world that they live in. The further you go into the series, the more you discover that the First Ones are very integral to everything that is happening in the show. The way that everything was connected to everything else was very satisfying to me in a way that reminded me of Tracy Chee's Reader trilogy. So this is book one, The Reader. This is set in a world where the written word is not a thing. Just people don't know how to write. And so after you die, you become a story, and only the people with the best life stories are remembered over generations. The main character's name is Sephia. She is an orphan, and she and her Aunt Nim have been on the run ever since her father was murdered. One day, the people who killed her father catch up to them and they take Nim away. And Sephia decides that she is going to rescue her. Starts tracking down these people. The only thing that she has is this mysterious object that her parents left behind when they died that they were protecting. And it turns out that this object is actually a book. Not only is it a book, it is like the most powerful book in Kalina. It holds the stories of everything that has ever happened, past, present, and future. Sephia begins to discover that the written word is not readily available to people because those who can write can perform magic. And so she begins to teach herself magic to help against these people who are after her and after this book, who are using this magic for their own greed. One of the most interesting things about it is that you will read these passages that Sephia is reading out of the book, and oftentimes you can't tell whether or not what she's reading took place in the past, the present, or will happen in the future. Next we have Adora. Adora is Shira. She's the main character of the series. At the very beginning of the show, she is actually a Horde soldier, and she is making her way up into the ranks. She is one of their best cadets, and she is on her way to being made a force captain. Then one day she and her friend Katra steal a speeder and travel out into the Whispering Woods, which is supposed to be very dangerous because it's filled with nefarious princesses. And Adora stumbles upon the Sword of Protection and eventually becomes Shira, meets Bow and Glimmer, and realizes that the Horde is actually the bad guys and decides to change sides. She spends a lot of time having to unlearn a lot of the things that she learned in the Horde. She can't be the hero all the time. She needs to learn how to accept help from people. She needs to learn how to let her friends support her. So the prompt that goes with Adora is pick a character who has some great character development. One of the things that Adora struggles with throughout the series is this sort of legacy that she's been handed. She's been handed this mantle of Shira. Shira is this legendary warrior. Something went wrong in the past involving Mara, who was the previous Shira, and so Adora just has a lot of pressure on her from the past and past actions of other people. And that theme is what I decided to kind of stick with. And so the book that I am recommending for great character development is Don't Date Rosa Santos by Nina Moreno. So this is one of my favorite young adult contemporaries, just ever. Rosa Santos is the granddaughter of a Cuban immigrant. Her grandmother and grandfather found out that her grandmother was pregnant. They decide to try to make it to America, but on the way over, her grandfather drowns. Rosa's mother meets this sailor, falls in love, gets pregnant. He goes off to sea one day and never returns. And so people in Port Coral believe that the Santos women are cursed, and that any man that they fall in love with is destined to meet his end at sea. So Rosa has grown up learning to stay away from the water. This becomes a lot more difficult when a company comes in and tries to purchase the marina, and the town decides that they want to pitch in together to help save it. And so the town's annual festival becomes a fundraiser to help save the marina. Rosa volunteers to help, and she's actually supposed to be helping plan a wedding that's taking place during the festival. There's a boy who's supposed to be helping her plan this wedding. He's quite cute, but unfortunately he owns a boat. At the same time as all of this main plot stuff is happening, Rosa is dealing with trying to reconcile her identity. She is a generation removed from her ancestral home. She feels disconnected from her culture because her grandmother never wants to talk about Cuba because it's traumatic for her. Having to leave was traumatic for her. Rosa actually wants to do this study abroad program in Cuba, but she is very afraid to tell her grandmother about it because she thinks she'll react poorly. So there's a whole other theme in here about how much of our heritage are we allowed to lay claim to, even if we're not directly connected to its source anymore. I really related to. I am, I guess, a fourth generation Mexican American. There are parts of our culture that we're very connected to, particularly the food, but other parts, like the language, that have been lost over time for various reasons. And I don't look the part. Every time I'm like, oh, my family's Mexican. People are like, what? Really? And then they proceed to ask me some slightly offensive questions. I really appreciated reading about Rosa's struggles, not only with this family curse, but also with just, you know, being human. It's just a very, very beautiful and emotional story. It's beautifully written. There's hints of magic in it, and I recommend it 100%. Next, we have Catra. Like I said, Katra at the beginning of the series is Adora's best friend in the Horde. When Adora decides to switch sides, Katra feels quite betrayed. She decides not to follow Adora over to Bright Moon and the Princess Rebellion, and instead begins to make her way up through the ranks of the Horde. Katra's whole, like, betrayal as part of her motivation to succeed deal is something that I could relate to a lot. Like, a lot of her hurt over seeing Adora make new friends and seeing her seemingly thrive even though Catra herself is struggling. Like, those are nasty feelings that I felt before, and so I can see and relate to how those might bubble into something more sinister the way that they do within Catra. So the prompt for Catra is to share a book with a villain or anti-hero point of view. So there's actually a book that I read recently where one of the main characters gave me pretty big Catra vibes. In fact, the ship is kind of Catra-Dora vibe. And that is The Dark Tide by Alicia Jasinska. This book is set on an island that is cursed. The ocean is slowly rising and taking over the island, and every year the queen of the witches who rule over the island has to pick a boy to fall in love with and then sacrifice to the ocean. And that is how they keep the tide from rising too high. 2 years ago, the witch queen fell in love with this boy and decided that she was not willing to kill him and instead sacrificed herself in his place so that he would survive. There are two point of view characters in this book. The first is Lena. She's just a girl on the island. She is a very talented dancer. She is in love with this boy who the witch queen sacrificed herself for. The other point of view character is the new witch queen. Her name is Eva, and her sister was the previous queen who sacrificed herself for this boy. Eva is still not over her sister's death. She's struggling to take her place. Her sacrifice didn't work last year because she couldn't bring herself to care about this other boy. She decides that this year she's going to get revenge on the boy who should have died instead of her sister. So she takes him away, and Lena decides to follow and get him back. Lena ends up taking this boy's place as the sacrifice, but she is determined to find a way out of it, whether that be escaping and running away or finding a way to break the curse. So going in, I knew that this book was going to be like evil, dark, angry, angsty witch / like stubborn sunshine dancer child, enemies to lovers sort of deal. I expected to really vibe with Lena because, like, for all intents and purposes, I am soft. I was a dancer, so like I could relate to her, and I did relate to her, but there was something about Eva and her just betrayal and anger that I was like, okay, I could vibe with this. And I really, really loved her as a character. She thinks that it is better to not care about anyone and just never get yourself hurt because everyone she has ever cared about has hurt her in some way. And Lena's so hopeful and just makes her want to believe that she can change things. I loved that. I loved their dynamic. The writing is absolutely gorgeous. The magic system is really cool. Everything about this story is so just wonderful. I finished it earlier this week. I have not stopped thinking about it in a similar way to how I've not stopped thinking about SheRa. So I really think that if you like SheRa, this is definitely darker in tone. But if you are a Katra Dora shipper, then you will really like this book. Next, we have Glimmer. Glimmer is the princess at Bright Moon, and she is the biggest believer in the Princess Alliance. When the Horde first arrived, all of the princesses of Etheria allied together to try to stop them, and they failed spectacularly. They lost Glimmer's father, and so her mother is still trying to protect their kingdom of Bright Moon, but she is very cautious, whereas Glimmer is very just like hot-headed, ready to go, ready to just like punch whoever. I love the way that you get to see Glimmer grow into her power, and she has probably my favorite power set out of any of the princesses. There's something about just Glimmer's just poof poof, like she teleports. She is so pink and purple and glittery, and like she punches people with sparkles, and yet she is one of the most powerful characters on the show, and I love that. For Glimmer, the prompt is to share a fictional world that you wish you could teleport into. You can tell that my Portal Fantasy loving self wrote this question. So there are so many like fictional worlds that I would love to transport myself into, just like bibbidi bobbidi boom, right? But I think I'm gonna have to go with the world of Patricia C. Reed's Enchanted Forest Chronicles. This is the first book dealing with dragons, and so this is set in a world that's like fairy tale adjacent. The main character, Cimarine, is a princess who is very interested in learning things that her parents deem to be improper for princesses, like how to sword fight and how to cook and how to do magic. Her parents decide that they are going to marry her off to a prince named Therendil, I believe, but Cimarine thinks he is incredibly boring. She goes outside to the garden to bemoan her fate, and she meets a talking frog who tells her if you follow these directions, they will take you to some people who can help you out of your predicament. And so she follows the directions that the frog gives her, and she ends up meeting some dragons and purposefully becoming a dragon's princess. I adored Cimarine growing up and reading these books. She was like one of my biggest role models because she just wanted to forge her own path in life that made her happy. So if I were going to go into a fantasy world, honestly, I think I would go here because I want to work for a dragon. That would be so cool. This has been one of my favorites for quite a long time, and I would love to go explore it. Next, we have Beau. Beau is honestly probably like my legitimate favorite character in this entire show. So he falls into that category of characters who they're part of the team, but they're not magical, so they have to make up for it with other things. Beau makes up for it by being super creative and ingenuitive. He comes up with a lot of their plans, and he is the single biggest cheerleader in all of Etheria. I love him so much. He puts such a big smile on my face, and he also has a lot of my favorite like comedic moments in the show. He might not be a princess, but he certainly has the heart of a princess, and we stan that energy on this channel. You can be magical without actually having magic, and Beau is the definition of that. So for Beau, the prompt is to share a sweet male character. To me, that means a character who does not fall into the trap of toxic masculinity. He may be powerful, he may be strong, but that is not what defines him completely. One of my favorite sweet male characters is Ellis from Emily Lloyd Jones's The Bone Houses. The Bone Houses is set in this Welsh folklore inspired world where in the mountains there used to be a fairy kingdom. The fairies are long gone, but the magic that they left behind is dangerous and sort of wreaking havoc. In particular, in the woods outside the village of Colburn, there are these creatures known as bone houses. Basically, anyone who's not properly buried comes back to life. The main character, Rin, is the grave digger for Colburn, and so it's her job to make sure that the dead stay buried. She meets Ellis, who is a map maker. He's come to make a map of the mountains, but also he has some mysteries in his past that he would like to figure out some answers to. The two of them team up to go into the mountains and find the source of the magic that is keeping these bone houses alive and destroy it. Now, Ellis actually suffers from an old injury that causes him chronic pain issues, which means he's a lot weaker in battle than Rin. He never treats her like he should be in charge because he's the guy. He never treats her like she's weird for being so strong. He, in fact, is so infatuated with her because she's so strong and brave and stubborn. He's brave too. Like, I love their dynamic. They're constantly trying to, like, save each other. One of the coolest things about Ellis is how seriously he takes his job. He gets lost trying to find this town because the map that he has is inaccurate, and he's very passionate about, like, a good map saves lives. And I love a character who has a non-traditional, like, occupation. Like, both of these characters have pretty non-traditional fantasy occupations, and they're both very passionate about what they do because they see it as very important. That same passion is something that Beau has for his inventions, and so I think that Ellis and Beau, two sweethearts, and they would get along. So the next prompt is actually for the Best Friends Squad. That's the name that Beau gives him, Adora, and Glimmer, but also throughout the series, Beau includes lots of different characters within the Best Friends Squad. The prompt for this is to share your favorite fictional friendship, and considering that basically whoever Beau is feeling affectionate toward at any given moment is in the Best Friend Squad, I wanted to pick a group that's very welcoming, and so I decided to go with the Samuel men's hockey team from Check Please. Hockey is seen as something that's quite masculine. Princesses, on the other hand, you know, are not. And yet, these two pieces of art both fill me with insane levels of dopamine. And also they're both super gay. So this is book 1 of Check Please, #hockey. The main character, Eric Biddy Biddle, is a former figure skater, current Samuel men's hockey teammate, and also does baking videos on the internet. And he's also the first openly gay member of this hockey team. You would think that he would get shit for it, right? Like, hockey is not known to be a, like, super diverse and loving environment, or at least that was not my mental image of hockey. And yet, like, they're so wonderful and accepting of Biddy. It's so sweet. They share this house, H-A-U-S. Basically, hockey team members are invited to live there. It's kind of like a frat house. Graduating seniors will give dibs to members and invite them to take their room. And so not only are they a team, but some of them become like this little family, and it's they're so just welcoming and amazing, and I love every single character in here, and like I said, just like SheRa, super emotionally satisfying LGBT elements. Book 2 is called Sticks and Scones, and we love baking on this channel and baking puns and just, these books are so good, you guys. Next, we have Perfuma. Perfuma is one of the members of the Princess Alliance. She is the Princess of Plumeria, and she has some really cool plant powers that she could kick your ass with, but she prefers growing flowers and friendships over fighting. She is also a super just total mom friend, which is why the prompt for Perfuma is to pick a comfort read. So my ultimate comfort read is Geekerella by Ashley Poston. Basically anything by Ashley Poston is very comforting to me. I love her words, but I've read Geekerella like 4 or 5 times now, and it never fails to make me smile. This book follows Elle. She's up here on top of the food truck. She is a Starfield fangirl. In the universe of this book, Starfield is a television show, kind of in the vein of Star Trek. Actually, it does give me some Shira vibes. If you liked the idiots sharing a spaceship vibes of season 5 of SheRa and the Princesses of Power, I think you'll really enjoy Ashley Poston's current canon of work. Elle is a Starfield fangirl. Her parents met at a Starfield convention. Her father passed down that love to her. He actually helped to start the biggest Starfield convention in the nation, ExcelsiCon. Unfortunately, this is a Cinderella retelling, so her parents are both dead, and she lives with her awful stepmother and her 2 bratty stepsisters. They don't understand her Starfield obsession at all. They think she's weird. It's announced that there's going to be a Starfield reboot in the form of a movie, and that the main character is going to be played by this teen drama actor named Darian Freeman. And Elle is so upset by that. She writes a very scathing blog post that actually kind of blows up about why she thinks that Darian is not right for the role. Down here we have Darian. Darian is actually a huge Starfield fanboy. He has been even before he got famous for filming Seaside Cove, this drama series that teenage girls across the nation are obsessed with. Getting the chance to play Federation Prince Carmendor is the opportunity of a lifetime for him. He thinks that the fandom is going to hate him. He's so concerned about living up to this character that he loves. The last thing he wants to do is surround himself with fans at ExcelsiCon. So he ends up going online and trying to find a number for the people in charge, texting Elle's father's old number. She has her father's old phone, and they end up texting back and forth without actually knowing who the other is, and they actually begin to bond. So lots and lots of hijinks ensue on the con floor, and you're left to wonder, will these two ever figure out that they're in love with each other? It's so good. Again, a thing that I think the SheRa fandom can relate to. Will these two ever figure out they're in love with each other? Who knows? Next we have Mermista. Mermista is another member of the Princess Alliance. She is the Princess of Selenius, which is an ocean-based kingdom, so all of her powers are centered around water. One of the coolest abilities that Mermista has is that she can turn into a mermaid and swim around in the water. That is why the prompt for Mermista is to share a book with magical creatures. I love all sorts of stories with magical creatures. I mean, like, there's a whole just section of my bookshelf dedicated to dragon books, but I actually wanted to pick a character who's similar to Mermista in that, like, it's kind of a hybrid situation, which is why I'm going with Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. So the main character, Yumiko, is half human, half kitsune, and she has been raised by this group of monks who are sworn to protect this ancient scroll called the Scroll of 1,000 Prayers. Yeah. The monks have basically encouraged her to not use her kitsune powers. They think that they're dangerous and mischievous, and just she is better off trying to be more human. But when a demon attacks the temple, it's up to Yumiko to take the scroll to another temple where it will be safe. The only way that she can make that journey safely is to team up with this demon slayer who she is not quite sure if she can trust, and so she decides to keep her kitsune magic a secret from him. This is such a fun quest story. The world is so just well thought out and believable. I know this is a SheRa video, but if you are also a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, this world building gives me some pretty strong Avatar vibes, and the character dynamics give me some pretty strong Avatar vibes as well. This is one of my favorite groups of like reluctant allies that I've ever read about. I love Yumiko. She's so playful. She's quite naive because she's grown up amongst these monks. She's going up against these creatures and these demons who are way more powerful than her, and she has to use her combination of magic and wits to defeat them, and it's just so good. I'm totally rereading this soon because I feel like I'm going to love this series so much, and I want to be able to read the rest of it, but I don't want to do myself a disservice by not remembering everything that happens in this book when I go into the sequels. Next we have Frosta. She is the youngest member of the Princess Alliance, but do not let that fool you. She can still kick some serious butt with her ice powers. You do not want to be on the wrong end of her like ice fists. She will knock you out. So the prompt for Frosta is to share a middle grade book. And I have a few middle grade books on my shelf here. I'm gonna go with the one that I actually read and loved when I was like 12, and that is, all the way at the top here, the Sisters Grimm books by Michael Buckley. There's like 1.5 million of these. This is like one of my go-to middle grade recommendations. When I worked at the library, I would recommend these books a lot. This series follows Sabrina and Daphne Grimm, whose parents disappeared mysteriously. They were put in foster care, but at the beginning of the series, they are sent to go live with the grandmother they always were told was dead in the town of Fairyport Landing, where they discover that they are the descendants of one of the brothers Grimm, and that the fairy tale characters are actually real, and a significant number of them are trapped in this town. As long as a Grimm is alive within the town of Fairyport Landing, its fairy tale citizens cannot leave, which means that a lot of the fairy tale citizens hold a grudge against their family. In fact, there is a evil rebel group of fairy tale characters called the Red Hand, with a secret leader who is out to get the Grimm family, and they are going to free the fairy tale creatures no matter what the cost is. I love this series so much. I spent a significant amount of my childhood wanting to be Sabrina, but I recently reread this first book and realized that I have always been and always will be a total Daphne. This was also, again, one of the only other series other than the Enchanted Forest Chronicles that I read as a kid where the main character is a girl. And that was so cool. Like, I looked up to Sabrina so much because of that. There are lots of wonderful middle grade heroines now, but like, I think that was just starting to become a thing when I was reading books in the genre, especially in fantasy. I read tons of like middle grade contemporary stories about best friends, right? But like fantasy heroines in middle grade, I feel are still kind of a newer concept. I'm always going to be really grateful for this, even if it was written by a man. So next we have Entrapta. Entrapta is the Princess of Drill. She is a master inventor and scientist who's a little better at dealing with technology and robots than she is at dealing with friendship and emotions. She's a very blunt and honest character, but as you get to know her throughout the series, you come to realize that she is actually really passionate and caring. This characterization, combined with some of her other quirks, like the way that she has a very strong preference for small food, made lots of fans speculate about whether she was supposed to be on the autism spectrum, and the show's creators have recently confirmed that they did write her with that in mind. Although the fantastical setting of Etheria doesn't have terminology like that. So in honor of Entrapta, we are sharing a book with neurodivergent representation. So neurodivergent is an umbrella term that covers a myriad of different brain differences. So people on the autism spectrum are considered to be neurodivergent, as well as people with ADHD or Tourette's or dyslexia, or even people with different mental illnesses like depression and anxiety. So I fall under that neurodiversity umbrella because of my anxiety disorder. So when a book has anxiety rep done really well, it makes me love it all the more, and so that's why I'm sharing You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I've talked about this book pretty much non-stop all of June. I read it the day it released. I now own a physical copy, and this book is so good for so many reasons. I've already talked about the LGBT representation in this. This is a sapphic romance. It's a high school story set at prom. The main character's name is Liz Leidy. She's one of only a few black students at this very affluent white high school. She dreams of following in her mother's footsteps and going to college, and she actually wants to become a doctor. Do I remember which kind of doctor? No, but it's a specialized kind of doctor, so it's going to be a lot of money to get her that degree. So she needs scholarships, and she's been banking on this music scholarship, but it falls through. And so she knows that if she goes to her grandparents, they would try to sell the house. She does not want that to happen. Luckily, prom at her high school is such a big deal that the prom king and queen get a really big scholarship for winning. And so she and her friends decide that they are going to turn her into the perfect prom queen candidate. There are only a few problems with that. First of all, the prom system is not built for people like Liz to win, so she's going to have to change a lot about herself to fit a certain type of mold that was not built for her. And second of all, she started to fall for some of her competition. Yay! Like I said, this is a very adorable sapphic rom-com sort of scenario, but another reason that I love this book is because Liz suffers from anxiety, and that is stated on page. She uses coping mechanisms, and she has a diagnosis, and she knows her boundaries, and just she has friends who know her coping mechanisms and are able to help her through moments of anxiety. There was an incident her freshman year where she experienced a pretty awful microaggression, and her friend did not stand up for her. And because of that, their friendship fell apart, and she decided that the only way for her to get through high school was to slip through unnoticed. That is a huge anxiety, mood. I felt very unnoticeable in high school. I had friends. Liz has friends. Liz is in band. Liz has people. Liz has her best friend. She's got a very supportive friend group. But at the same time, she, no one really knows her in the general population, if that makes sense. She's forgettable. The biggest message in this is that she learns to make her own space and take up her own space and, you know, be loud and proud and just, it's such a beautiful story. But she struggles so hard to do that, and a big part of that is because of the anxiety that she feels. Just the ways that Liz thinks about herself, when you take race out of the equation, because that is not something that I have ever had to deal with, but just the ways that she limits herself without other people having to do it for her. It's such a wonderful story, and just seeing her blossom it was just so good, and I loved it so much. Next, we have Double Trouble. Double Trouble is a fan favorite, and I have much appreciation for Double Trouble. Double Trouble tells it like it is. They are a non-binary shapeshifter, which is just such a cool concept, and the person who did the voice acting for that character is also non-binary. It's little things like that that make this show so special. For Double Trouble, the prompt is to pick your favorite queer character. I've talked about a lot of my favorite queer characters, and like, it's so hard to choose, right? It's so hard to choose because they're all my babies. So I'm gonna go with one that I haven't talked about yet, and that is Violet Saunders from the Devouring Grey duology. Violet is probably my favorite of the point of view characters in this book. So the 5 main characters are the descendants of the founders of the town of Four Paths, New York. Violet did not grow up in Four Paths, but she enters and immediately starts to develop these magical powers that she inherited and does not know what the heck is going on and has to figure it out while the other founder kids are infighting. And I love how she embraces the town but also doesn't. She cares about these people that she's met, and she wants to protect the town from the beast that lives in the grave. But at the same time, because she's an outsider, she is not afraid to call them on their, like, bullshit. Violet also identifies as bisexual, and she was the first character that I read about in a fantasy novel who used that label. So, for example, in The Dark Tide, Lena is canonically attracted to both men and women, but because it's set in a world different from our own, it would not make sense for her to use the label bisexual. Because this is a contemporary fantasy, Violet can use the same labels that I use, which was amazing, and I love it. And there's a conversation between her and her love interest, who is also bi, in this second book, where they come out to each other. It's good. It's great. I love that. And I think there's a similar scene in one of the other books I'm about to talk about. I like coming out scenes where it's really casual. I'll talk about that again in a second. Next we have Scorpia. Scorpia is one of my favorite SheRa characters. I think I've said that about like half of these characters. She's technically a princess, however, because she is part Scorpion, she and her family felt like they didn't fit in with the other princesses, and when the Horde took over their kingdom, they kind of just joined them. And so she's been working for the Horde, but she is like the sweetest, most passionately loyal character in the entire show. She makes friends really easily, she gives great hugs, and she puts everyone else's needs before herself. Only a sweetheart like her could put up with Catra's BS for that long. Which is why the prompt for Scorpia is to share a character who should be protected. For this, I wanted to pick a character who is generally considered to be strong, but who is probably too loyal for their own good and needs somebody to look out for them or else they'll do something stupid. The problem is that describes so many young adult protagonists. Like, so many protagonists. But I'm going to go with a recent read, My Calamity Jane by Brody Ashton, Cynthia Hand, and Jodie Meadows. This is the third book in their Jane's series, and it follows Calamity Jane, a famous Wild West show star. She was part of Wild Bill's traveling show back in the day, and she used a bullwhip, and there were lots of folktale rumors about her. So if you're not familiar with this series, the Lady Janies, as they call themselves, like to take famous Janes from both history and literature and then tell the real stories behind their lives. So in this, you learn that Calamity Jane and Frank Butler and Annie Oakley were actually werewolf hunters. They're on the trail of this specific werewolf who's been purposefully turning people into wolves. They get a lead, but some stuff goes awry and Jane ends up getting bit. And so she has heard that there is a cure for this ailment if you go to Deadwood, and so she heads off to Deadwood on her own because she doesn't want to put her friends in danger. Of course, they follow her and hijinks ensue. I don't want to spoil too much of this, but Jane is definitely emotionally manipulated in a similar way to both Catra and Scorpia. She is not your traditional feminine hero. She dresses in men's clothing, she uses a bullwhip, she is just very, like, strong, tough, thinks she can take care of herself, but, you know, she needs someone there for her emotionally, and when she runs away from her friends, she puts herself in a vulnerable position. I love the trio dynamic that is in this book. I love the found family aspects, and it's really good. And also there's LGBT representation in this, which it's the first book in the Jane's series that has had LGBT representation, and I was not expecting it, so that was really exciting as well. Last but not least, we just have Shira and the Princesses of Power. And the prompt for this is to just share your favorite book with LGBT representation. Shira is historical in the fact that it is one of the first television shows to show LGBT characters on screen so blatantly and in such a big way. And, you know, like, if you're here from the Shira fandom, you know, it's a pretty queer place. So of course it's very fitting to share an LGBT book when you're talking about Shira. I've shared a majority, I think, of the books that I've talked about today have LGBT representation in them. I'm gonna go with one that I've loved recently, which is I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. The main character, Sky, is a Korean American girl who is auditioning for You're My Shining Star, which is a K-pop reality TV show. The winners of the competition get to try to make it in the K-pop industry. The thing is, Sky is a plus-size girl, which in Korea is a thing that's looked down upon. But Sky is determined to prove everyone wrong, including her own mother, who is constantly telling her that she should just focus on singing and that someone as big as her cannot be a dancer. Sky knows that she is talented and that she can win this competition. I love this book for so many reasons. It tackles racism within the entertainment industry. It tackles sexism within the entertainment industry, it tackles homophobia within the entertainment industry, it tackles fat phobia within the entertainment industry. There are several LGBT characters within the story. Sky herself is bisexual, her love interest is bisexual. She has two friends that she makes who are a lesbian couple. My favorite part about it is how casual it is. When Sky and her love interest come out to each other, it's an emotional moment, but also it's just like, oh, you're like me, okay, cool. Like I said, I love stories where I get to see my label. I loved seeing Violet identify as bisexual in a fantasy novel because that's the kind of story that I love, and I love knowing that there are people like me in those worlds. I love out and proud characters. I love reading coming out stories and stories about people figuring out their sexuality, their gender, finding where they belong. I love stories filled with rainbows and all sorts of pride. But at the same time, I just want to see more stories about queer people living and being queer if that's not the story. That's one of the many, many reasons why I adored reading that book, and it made me so jittery and happy. Like, I get jittery and happy every time two girls kiss in a book still. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. But I also got jittery and happy just hearing this bisexual girl and this bisexual boy who have feelings for each other be open and honest with each other about their identities. I'll be the one. It's not an overtly queer story, but it's an inherently queer story. Okay, so that was the Shira and the Princesses of Power book tag. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this tag was co-created by Dani from the metamorphoreader. You should go give her blog post some love and go like her bookstagram photos. She's so amazing, and thank you so much, Dani, for helping me come up with these questions. It was so exciting when someone reached out to me about it, so thank you so much. And thank you all of you SheRa fans out there. I love being part of this fandom, and this show means so much to me, and I love connecting with people who it means a lot to as well. And I hope that maybe you will read some of these books and they will mean something to you, and then we can talk about them. Leave a comment down below. I literally will talk to anybody about anything SheRa related. I love it so much. So if you want to share that love in the comment section, or you can find me on Twitter as well. And if you want to do this tag, consider yourself tagged. If you're seeing this and you want to make a video, or you want to write a blog post, more power to you. Please, please do. I want to share all of the love and all of the magic. So, with that being said, my name is Evelyn. I make new videos every magical Monday, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.